Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm excited for my next guest. It's Teddy Cahill with Baseball America. There's a lot I want to get to, Teddy, with where the Miami Hurricanes stand, kind of nationally, the ACC, and also I've got some mailbag questions for some of our subscribers. But first off, how's it going?
It's wonderful. It's a great time of year. Baseball is, with basketball season over, everyone's kind of now focused in the college sports world on college baseball, and it's a wonderful place to be. The weather's nice. Getting into the second half of the season, can't complain too much this time of year.
And there's a lot to get to, like I said, with just kind of where things are standing as teams. Miami starts to turn the corner on that second half of the season, finishing strong. And I know you've got your projections out already on where maybe the tournament of 64. I guess just starting off with Miami, from a national perspective, or your perspective, just kind of where this team is heading into the series against Clemson.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot right now. Miami coming off of that sweep at Pitt. They've been fighting it a little bit for the last few weeks, I feel like, and I don't really know what's the root cause of that. Pitt is a very good team. There's no shame in going up there and not winning the series. Florida State couldn't get it done in Tallahassee against the Panthers, but Miami's a younger team. And I think sometimes nationally, we forget that a little bit because some of these players are second year players, but this is their first time in ACC play. There's so many freshmen involved, so many guys in new roles. And, with younger teams, we know that they go through some ups and downs. And so I think that they should be able to pull out of that. They've certainly got the talent for it. We saw them play really well early in the season. And, I think that sometimes, you worry about freshmen hitting a wall or something. I don't know if that's the case here, or maybe it's a little more simple than that. But when you look at this team, I still like what they have. Right now it's been a long ACC season, and maybe that's just worn on them a little bit here over the last few weeks.
One of the things that stands out to me, so right now, as it stands with the ACC standings, Miami's 1-8 against those teams that are above 500. 3-9 against teams currently ranked in the Baseball America top 25. So I feel like this sample size is starting to get a little bit larger on Miami struggling against better teams, frankly. And I'm a little bit concerned. They still have big series against Georgia Tech, Louisville coming up. Obviously, Clemson right at that 500 mark. So it'll be very interesting, kind of see if Miami can kind of turn the corner there. Just with the ACC, Teddy, I was curious. There was a lot coming into the season. A lot of people felt like the ACC was pretty strong. I know the SEC's had a good season thus far. As a whole, what do you think about the ACC, maybe even those top teams?
Yeah, I think the ACC right now looks like the deepest conference in the country. I think the SEC has the better top end teams. I think they have the more national championship level contenders. I think the ACC teams, pretty much all of them, are kind of flawed in not an insignificant way. You look at Louisville and, you see a team that's not pitching as well as what we would normally see. And some of that's due to injuries, certainly, but it's still not the same kind of Louisville pitching staff that people have come to expect. You look at Georgia Tech and you see, a high scoring team, but a team that doesn't have the offense. Florida State has had some ups and downs. Their defense has not always been there. Their offense hasn't always been there. When they put it together, they're a really good team. And, I could do this for every team in the ACC. And I think it's a little harder to do that with some of the top end SEC teams. But what I do think is great about the ACC is that, 1 through 14, it's a really competitive league. Even BC, which right now is at the bottom of the standings, has a lot of talent, and we've seen them win series against some high-end competition already this season. So what stands out to me about the ACC is absolutely the depth, which I don't think is a surprise. Coming into this year, I thought that pretty much every team in the conference might be improved from where they were a year ago. And, maybe Miami right now is an exception to that. But at least at the bottom end of the conference, you're certainly seeing the bottom end of traditionally what we think of as the ACC, Pitt, Virginia Tech, these teams that are having great years. It sure does seem like a lot of teams were able to take a step forward into 2021, which has created a very deep competitive conference that now, of course, is playing 12 weekends. It's a little unfortunate for some of these teams that in what is probably the deepest the ACC has been, they have to play the most ACC games.
And sure, like you said, they've already played the series already. Miami has 5 series left. It goes Clemson, North Carolina, Boston College. Then, like I said, with Georgia Tech and Louisville. Certainly, with where Miami's at right now, 10-10, they're in fifth in the Coastal, 3.5 out of first. Virginia Tech. I remember seeing that you felt like they're one of your top surprise teams in the country. And then on the flip side, Clemson 9-9. They come into this series losing their last three. And for people that have followed college baseball over the years, Clemson has certainly been one of those programs that has had a lot of success. I was curious your thoughts on Clemson and maybe kind of where that team is heading into this series against Miami.
Yeah, the Tigers started the season slowly. They dealt with some early injuries, and I think that affected them early on. And so they didn't get off to the start that they would have wanted in ACC play, but they've really picked things up here over the last few weeks. I think they've figured some things out on the mound, moved some parts around. It's not the flashiest Clemson team that they've had over recent years. There's no Seth Beer, there's no Logan Davidson, I don't think, but they have some strong overall pieces. They play a pretty offensive style, as Monty Lee teams have done at Clemson, and they pitch enough. And I think that they can be pretty successful like that. But I don't think that this is one of the premier teams in the ACC right now, and I think the record reflects that.
One of the strengths that Miami has, and if you've seen the statistics, Miami is in the bottom half offensively against ACC opponents, pretty much all across the board. But one of their strengths is Carson Palmquist on the back end, and I know I've seen him mentioned in one of your articles, one of the top freshmen in the country. He's that second-year freshman, so he's pitching a lot, and I'm curious your take on that as a closer, pitching quite a bit, the 2-inning save, the 6-out saves quite a bit. Your thoughts on that philosophy and essentially can it hold up?
Yeah, it's been interesting to see how they've used him. Like you said, multi-innings, most of his appearances, and then that means that usually he doesn't. If he pitches on Friday night, he's probably not available on Saturday because of that. I'll trust JD and how he wants to use his pitchers, what to get the best out of them. Palmquist is an incredible weapon at the back of the bullpen. He's near the top, if not still at the top of the leaderboard in saves, and he brings so much consistency, and you have to feel amazing when he comes into the ball game that he's going to do what you're expecting him to do, which is to lock down the game. And so I think that he has that's been a critical component for the Canes thus far. They've a lot of things on the mound have been a little uncertain to this point in the season. I feel like some guys in the bullpen haven't really, that the bullpen is still with aside from Palmquist, I feel like is still trying to find itself in many ways. And so to have that, I feel like is a significant luxury. If he can hold up, I mean, we'll see. I think that he should be able to. The bullpen ace in college baseball is not that foreign of a concept. If you look broadly across the country over the last several years, I think that what he's doing right now is not necessarily unique, but as a closer, as a pure closer doing it, it does mean that he has a lot of stressful innings, and I think that would be the only concern is just the high stress of all of his appearances. Ultimately at the end of the season, though, he's going to end up with like 50 innings, I think, probably maybe a touch higher than that he's on track for, and plenty of relievers I think wind up with numbers close to that ultimately. So I think he should be okay to finish the season doing at least if not the outrageous performance, because who knows if that's sustainable, but the role I think should be sustainable.
And Teddy, your projections, and we've talked about Miami right now, just a little bit up, just up and down throughout the year. And I know they've had team meetings and they feel like, okay, now we got to figure it out. I know that's kind of been their theme. They got within a half game of first place, surprisingly, last weekend before being swept. So they've been up and down, and just curious your current projections. With the field of 64, where do you see Miami at this current time, and maybe where could they go if they finish strong? And then also, Teddy, for people that don't know, could you update or just explain what's going on with the regional process? It's definitely different this year.
Yeah, I guess let's start with that, just get it out of the way. So this year, because of the situation that we're in with the pandemic, the NCAA needs each regional host site to also be a testing site for COVID. And they can't set that up in just a few days. So typically, the regional host sites have been announced on Sunday night leading into Selection Monday. So that gives you just a few days before the regionals start on Friday to get everything in place. Well, to start a COVID test site on that cycle and get it tested to the point where you're confident that it's everything's running smoothly, it can't happen. So they, instead of that process, they're just accelerating the decisions on the regional hosts by a few weeks. They need 3 weeks, they say, to get a testing center up to speed. So they're going to move it up from the end of May to early May. And as a result, there are going to be teams that finish. There's at least going to be one team, I am confident, that finishes strong, that is not going to get to host a regional, that in a normal year would host a regional. And that's really unfortunate for them. It's unfortunate for all of their fans. But when you look at what some of the other sports have gone through, how drastically their tournaments have been altered, and just their structures, I feel like baseball gets off a little bit easier here. You know, basketball, they both went into a bubble. The soccer tournaments, they're being moved off of campus sites into North Carolina so that the NCAA can limit travel and work under one state's restrictions as opposed to many states' restrictions. So baseball's still going to have the typical structure of a regional and a super regional on campus sites. Just those campus sites are going to be predetermined a few weeks in advance. So it is different. It is unfortunate to an extent, but I do think overall, broadly speaking, when you think about where some other sports were and where baseball was last year, not having a tournament, I think we can accept this. Now, as for Miami, right now, we've had them as a 2 seed the last few weeks. This week, sent them to Starkville. I don't know how many Miami fans want to relive that after the going there a few years ago, but that's where they landed this week. It's tricky to see where they're tracking. You reminded me before we started here that I had them going to Gainesville a week ago, and well, now Florida's not hosting after they lost their series at Tennessee. I don't think Florida's dead in the hosting picture, but they're going to have to play better, more consistently than they've been playing to this point, particularly on the road. That's an easy location, an easy landing spot for the Noles and the Canes over the years. And it looks like there might not be a regional in the state of Florida this year. You know, we'll see how everyone tracks. But right now, if that doesn't happen, then, you know, Miami being an ACC team probably ends up at another SEC team site. They're probably not going to send them too terribly far. You know, the West Coast or into Texas doesn't seem as likely, but you never can quite tell once you start getting away from the easy drivable regionals. So, you know, a Mississippi school I think would be on the table. You know, South Carolina probably isn't, just because there are many schools around there. So I would lean more towards looking at Ole Miss, Mississippi State, maybe up to Tennessee. Although again, there are a lot of other drivable schools around there. So, you know, there's a wide variety. Right now, though, I think Miami is. If the season were to end today, I'd feel comfortable with them as a 2 seed. But, you know, that with them being dead 500 right now in the ACC picture, it becomes a little tougher to predict where they're going to go over these next 5 weeks. And I think it's critical for them to stay on the 2 line, to continue to be at least 500, if not better. I mean, having that series win against Florida is a really nice thing to have in their back pocket. But where you finish in the ACC standings for a lot of these teams, I think is going to determine a large part of where they land on the 1, the 2, and the 3 line.
It definitely makes sense, and certainly a lot of games still left, but with where they're at right now, it's very interesting. And also the big thing, and that Gino Damari's talked about, they want to be playing better and playing well, regardless of where they go or how everything ends up. Okay, Teddy, I've got some mailbag questions that I want to get to from our subscribers on InsideTheU.com. First off, with Kane8788, he asked, do you foresee the transfer portal being as big of a deal in baseball as it's been in football and basketball?
Quite possibly it could be bigger. I know that seems kind of crazy, but this is a partial scholarship sport. Those other ones are full scholarship sports, and you have guys that are really just looking for better opportunities, be it playing time or to try and get to a better team. In baseball, you could have somebody who's got plenty of playing time, but maybe they need something more financially, or look at could obtain a better financial situation. And the other thing with football, you have to relearn plays, and I get that maybe that gets overblown a little bit, especially when you see all these 5-star quarterbacks transferring. Maybe the idea that you need to relearn playbooks and build chemistry isn't as big as maybe I thought it was even 5 years ago. But in baseball, you don't have to worry about that so much. Chemistry is nice, but it's not. It's an individual sport wrapped up in a team sport, much more so than those other two. So I'll be interested to see what it looks like. I mean, you've seen a fair amount of movement already. Miami's experienced that itself, in the portal. And if the one-time transfer comes back to baseball, when it was there the last time, it was already pretty active. And, as we all have heard, many people say that this generation of athletes is maybe a little more prone to transferring than previous generations. And again, last time baseball had this, it got taken away 10 to 15 years ago now as part of an overhaul to try to improve the academics. Things were pretty active on the baseball transfer front. So I would expect it, yes, this summer and beyond to again, be very active.
Okay, Z Kane's 13. And this is okay. Do you think the NCAA would work with Major League Baseball and change the Division One to the draft rules, to allow a freshman to be drafted rather than the 3-year wait, 21-year-old draft rules? Do you see that changing?
I don't think the NCAA would particularly care too much about that. From what I understand, the NCAA just wants there to be a rule, and then they'll work with it. I don't think that they care whether it's 1 versus 3. They probably actually prefer that once you're here, you have to be here for 3 years. So no, I don't think that they would look to change that. I don't think MLB would look to change that either at this point, because everything they've done over the last couple of years has been to contract the minor leagues. So they just don't have as much room to take in some of these players. If they were looking to do that, I don't think they would have contracted the minor leagues. They would have allowed for more high schoolers to be drafted just by continuing to have as many minor league teams as they did a couple of years ago. And again, the draft is also being contracted. Right now, it's probably only going to be 20 rounds going forward. So right now, that doesn't seem like something Major League Baseball is particularly interested in. They seem more interested in letting more players develop in college baseball.
Kane 4420. Where do you see Adrian Del Castillo in the draft evaluations? And has he done enough to warrant leaving, or should he come back?
I definitely think he's done enough to warrant leaving. I think you're looking at him as a lock first-round pick, and we still have him in the projected top 10 pick range, maybe into the top 5 pick range. As a very well-established hitter, everything he's done since he got to Miami has been hit. He seems like he's improved defensively. Still, definitely that's not the stronger part of his game. That continues to be offensively. But I think he's done enough to convince a Major League Baseball team to pick him early in the first round, and I would expect that to be the case in July.
Last question here from Jake F081416. With many Latin-born Major League players breaking through in the league before they turn 23, do you expect interest to drop off in Division One for prospects, and not just Latin? There's a lot of players breaking through earlier, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like a lot of teams have accelerated the development schedule. The spring training, everyone got very excited about Bobby Witt with the Royals, and he was a high school draft just a couple of years ago, and it seems like he'll be in the big leagues for Kansas City soon. So I would agree that the development cycle, teams are no longer as conservative as they used to be. But again, with the everything that Major League Baseball has done in terms of the minor leagues and contracting them, college baseball is very clearly still in their plans going forward, and perhaps more prominent in their plans going forward. And the other thing is, you've seen no longer do college players have to wait a terribly long time once they get into the minor leagues. They're getting pushed forward more aggressively as well. Casey Mize, already in the big leagues on opening day for the Tigers. I don't think Spencer Torkelson is going to take too much longer to get to the Tigers himself. And you look at Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker this year, who are projected top 5 picks. I mean, I don't know if they'll do it because the teams that are going to be drafting them this year are not going to be very good next year, probably again. But those guys could pitch in the big leagues as soon as 2022, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. So no, I think that college baseball remains an excellent source for the draft, for prospects, and if anything, the high end players. It's been a long held truism in baseball that you draft all-stars through the high school ranks, you draft solid players through the college ranks. Even that I feel like is changing. You're seeing guys like Alex Bregman, what he's been able to do, George Springer, so many of these college players that have gone on to real star power in Major League Baseball. I don't think that's changing, particularly again with the changes to the draft and to minor league baseball.
And before we get you out of here, I'd like to ask you a question about any College World Series memories or things that stand out to you from attending that. Anything at all, Teddy?
Wow, that's a broad one. The Coastal Carolina story. I think that one definitely springs to mind very quickly. It was such a fantastic run by the Chanticleers, and the way it ended too, with Anthony Marks with a great throw to the plate there in the final against Arizona, playing the ball perfectly off the wall. Like that whole story was fantastic. And then you think about the final between Oregon State and Arizona. I thought it was or Arkansas rather. I thought it was over. I think a lot of people thought it was over when that pop-up gets hit. And then ultimately, Oregon State finds new life when that pop-up falls in foul ground. And all of a sudden, Oregon State is winning the title in 2018. And, that think about Kumar Rocker and what he was able to do in 19. And, I know Canes fans don't want to hear this, but the Florida team in 17 was fantastic as well. Since I've been covering the sport, 2016 was my first year with Baseball America covering college baseball. And I think all of those Omaha experiences have been great, but maybe the one that's really going to stick with me is the Coastal one. Not only was it my first, but you think about a school like Coastal Carolina winning a national title, Gary Gilmore, an alum, having done so much to bring his program to a level where they can succeed in Omaha. It was a fantastic thing to see.
Yeah, it's certainly great to hear. And I've shared it a little bit on here, but I've only been to one College World Series, and that was in 06. So it's been quite a few years, and I have vowed to go back whenever Miami gets there. So we'll see if they make that run this year or sometime soon. But definitely, I enjoyed my time there. My friend Adam came with me, and we were just talking about it the other day. That just how much fun it was, and the thing about it for people that haven't gone, the atmosphere is incredible, but also it's just so much fun seeing so many games, so many stories, and very good baseball at that time. So it's a lot of fun, and you certainly have had quite a few great experiences these last few years. So Teddy, definitely appreciate you, man. I know you got a busy schedule. I appreciate you jumping on, talking about Miami, ACC, national perspective. Thanks again for jumping on, and enjoy the games.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care.